Hello, hello. My name is Ryasu, and I think this is a good mic. If so, if it does work or not. Hello, my name is Ryasu, and I will be reading the Red Hat. Man, I think. Hold on. I gotta watch my own stream to see if it works or not. But if not, then oh boy, this kind of does suck to say the least. Hold on. Hello, my name is Ryasu, and I will be reading the Red Hat. Man, I think. Hold on. I gotta watch my own stream to see if it works or not. But if not, then oh boy, this kind of does suck. Hello, my name's Arai, but not really my name, but it is a name, an alias that I like. If you hate yourself, then you must be known that nothing can be shared in a shirt. Anyways, who cares? Hello. Okay, let me turn this shit on. Alright, let's put on something. Oh my days, man. Oh my days, man. Anyways, let's build something in this world of Minecraft. Doesn't really have to make sense, but the outstanding rules of your own mind. Anyway, this book, I read 8 chapters. I mean, I'm on chapter 8, but so far it's kind of, it's alright. Most of the times you read in your mind, but what's so bad about it? Zero. Lol, who cares? Nobody knows. I'm simply something in the past and an occurring something that's not important. Hold on, I can hear the own music coming out of the. Oh wow. Well, in the meantime, I can make a room. Oh yeah, I can just go over there. Just build a little room for myself. Never mind. I could probably expand it. Or just right here. Uh,
Hey, I need to launch a campaign in 2 weeks. Let's
All right.
see.
Anyways, All right. Let me turn on my lights. Hello? Anybody? What's your dream? Hello? Oh, shoot. Wait, who's watching? Hello? Oh my god, somebody left. Uh, I guess that's how you lose your viewership, but it doesn't really matter. Who cares? At this point, it does not matter what I can and what I can't do. All right, let's make a pro. Let's make a Let's make a. Yeah, get out of here. All right. People say that it's a very good thing to do and read, but well, does not matter anyways. Anyways, hold on. Testing the mic, the quality, the issues, the needs of it. But what could that cause? But anyways, wait, there's no noise. There's absolute no noise. Properties. 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 Is it headphones? Is that what's causing it? Nope. I don't think that's what's causing it. What the heck? Hello. Nope. Headphones. Are you kidding me? Alright, hold on. I gotta close the window. On some earbuds. No, not for that. Okay, so I think. Is it even getting any noise? I don't think it's getting any noise. Hello, can anyone hear me? Hello, can anyone hear me? I'm making sure that most of this is working. Oh my days. What? What the heck? It's not even working, dude. What the heck? But I think it's not a good thing to our deal. There's no noise registering. Is there anything? Hello? Hello? Hold on. Hello? 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 Reading has now continued. Nothing can hold me back at this point. Alright, let's just get started. Dr. Hannibal Lecter laid on his cot, with his cell lights down after Graham left him. Superman was past. For a while, he had textures, the weave of the pillowcase against his hand clasped behind his head, the smooth membrane that lined his cheek. Then he had odors that let his mind play over them. Some were real, some were not. They had put Clorox in the drains. Seamen, they were serving chili down the hall. Sweat stiffened, cocky. Graham would not give him his home telephone number. The bitter green smell of cut cocoa burr and tea weed. Lecter sat up, The man might have been Sybil. His thoughts had been warm, brass smell of electric clock. Lecter blinked several times and his eyebrows rose. He turned up to the lights and wrote the note wrote to Chilton, asking for a telephone to call his counsel. Lecter was entitled by law to speak with his lawyer in privacy, and he hadn't abused the right. Since Chilton would never allow him to go to the telephone was brought to him. 2 guards brought it, unrolling a long cord from the telephone. Jack at the desk. One of the guards had the keys, the other a can of mace. Go back to the cell, Dr. Lecter. Face the wall. If you turn around or approach the area before you hear the lock snap, I'll mace you in the face. Understand? Yes, indeed, Lecter said. Thank you so much for bringing the phone. He had to reach through the nylon net to dial. Chicago Information gave him numbers for the University of Chicago Department of Psychiatry and Dr. Alan Bloom office number. He dialed the psychiatry department switchboard. I'm trying to reach Dr. Alan Bloom. I'm not sure he's in today, but I'll connect you. Just a second, I'm supposed to know this secretary's name, and I'm embarrassed to say I've forgotten it. Linda King, just a moment. Thank you. The telephone rang 8 times before it was picked up. Linda King's desk. Hi, Linda. Linda doesn't come in on Saturday. Dr. Lecter had encountered on that. Maybe you could help me if you don't mind. This is Bob Greer at Blaine and Edwards Publishing Company. Dr. Bloom asked me to send a copy of the Overholser book, The Psychiatrist and the Law, to Will Graham, and Linda was supposed to send me the address and the phone number, but she never did. I'm just a graduate assistant. She'll be in on Monday. I'll have a catch of Federal Express with it in about 5 minutes. And I hate to bother Dr. Bloom about it at home because he told Linda to send it, and I don't want to get her in hot water. It's right there in the Rolodex or whatever. I'll dance at your wedding if you read it to me. She doesn't have a Rolodex. How about a called caddy with a slide on the side? Yes, be a darling on the slide, that rascal, and won't take up any more of your time. What was the name? Graham. Will Graham. Alright. His home number is 305 JL5 7002. I'm supposed to mail it into his house. It doesn't give the address of his home. But what does it have? Federal Bureau of Investigation, 10th in Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. Oh, the post office of 3680. Marathon, Florida. It's fine. You're an angel. You're welcome. Lecter felt much better. He thought he might surprise Graham with a call sometime, or if the man couldn't be civil, he might have a hospital supply house mail. Graham, a colonoscopy bag for old time's sake. Okay, so he somehow called Graham. Well, I think it's alright. 700 miles to the southwest in the cafeteria at Gateway Film Laboratory of St. Louis, Francis Dollarhide was waiting for a hamburger. The entry fees offered and steam table were filmed over. He stood over by the cash register and sipped coffee from a paper cup. A red-haired young woman wearing a laboratory smock came into the cafeteria and studied the candy machine. She looked at the Francis Dollarhide back several times and pursed her lips against. Finally, she walked over to him and said, "Mr. D." Dollarhide turned. He always wore red goggles outside the dark room. She kept her eyes at the nose piece of the goggles. "Will you sit down with me for a minute? I want to tell you something." "What can you tell me, Eileen?" "That I'm really sorry. Bob was just really drunk and clowning around. He didn't mean anything." Please come sit down just for a minute, will you? Do that? Oh, shit. Dollarhide never said yes, as he had trouble with his sibilance. They said she twisted a napkin in her hand. Everybody was having a good time at the party, and we were glad you came by. She said, real glad, and surprised too. You know how Bob is. He does voices all the time. He ought to be on the radio. He did 2 or 3 accents telling jokes and all. He can talk just like a... Oh boy, I can't say that. When he did that other voice, he didn't mean to make you feel bad. He was too drunk to know who was there. They were all laughing. Then they didn't laugh. Dollarhide never said it stopped because of the fricative. That's when Bob realized that he had done. He went on. I know it, she said, managing to look from her napkin to his goggles without lingering on the way. I got on his case about it too. He said he didn't mean anything. He just saw he was into it and tried to keep up the joke. You saw how red his face got. He invited me to perform a duet with him. He hugged you and tried to put his arms around you. He wanted you to laugh it off, Mr. D. I've laughed it off too, Eileen. Bob feels terrible. Well, I don't want him to feel terrible. I want that telling him for me. And it won't be making a difference here at the plant. Golly, if I had the talent like Bob, I'd make a joke all the time. All together before long, he'll know how I feel. Good, Mr. D. You know, he's really under the fun. He's really a sensitive guy. I'll bet. Tender, I imagine. Dollarhide's voice was muffled by his hand. When seated, he always pressed his knuckle of his forefinger under his nose. Pardon. You're good for him, Eileen. I think so. I really do. He's not drinking, but just on the weekends. He just starts to relax and his wife calls the house. He makes faces while I talk to her, but I can tell he's upset. A woman knows. She tapped Dollarhide on the wrist, and despite the goggles, saw the touch register on his eyes. Take it easy, Mr. D. I'm glad we had this talk. I am too, Eileen. Dollarhide watched her walk away. She had such mark on the back of her knee. He heard correctly that Eileen did not appreciate him. No one did, actually. The great dark room was cool and smelled of chemicals. Ransom Dollarhide checked the developer in the tank. Hundreds of feet of home movie filled from all over the country moved through the tank orally. Temperature and freshness of the chemicals were critical. This was his responsibility, along with all other operations until the film had passed through the dryer. Many times a day he lifted samples of film from the tank and checked them frame by frame. The afternoon was quiet. Dollarhide discouraged the character among his assistants and communicated with them largely in gestures. When the evening shift ended, he remained alone in the dark room to develop the dry and splice from film of his own. Dollarhide got home about 10 p.m. He lived alone in a bakehouse his parents had left him. It stood at the end of a gravel drive runs through... What the heck, is this the right page? At the end of a gravel drive and runs through an apple orchard north of St. Charles, Missouri. Across the Missouri River from St. Louis, the orchard abstained. Owner did not take care of it. Dead and twisted trees stood among the green ones. Now in late July, the smell of rotten apples hung over the orchard. There were many bees in the daytime. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Dollarhide always made an inspection tour of the house as soon as he got home. There has been an abortive burglary attempt some years ago. He flicked the lights on in each room and looked around. A visitor could not think he lived alone. His grandparents' clothes still hung in the closets. His grandmother's brushes were on the dressers with combings of hairs out of them. teeth were in a glass on the besides the table. The glass, since evaporated, is. Hold on. Okay, I think that's it. Alright. The water had long since evaporated. His grandmother had been dead for 10 years. The funeral director had asked him, "Mr. Dollarhide, wouldn't you like to bring me your grandmother's teeth?" He replied, "Just drop the lid." Satisfied that he was alone in the house, Dollarhide went upstairs and took a long shower, washed his hair, and put a kimono in a synthetic material that felt like silk, and lay down on his narrow bed in the room he had occupied since childhood. His grandmother's hair dryer with a plastic cap in his nose, he put on the cap, and while he dried, he thumbed through the new high-fashion magazine. The hatred and the brutishness in some of the photographs were remarkable. He began to feel excited. He swiveled the middle shade of his reading lamp to light a print on the wall of the foot of the bed. It was William Blake's The Great Red Dragon and the woman's clothes in the sun. The picture had stunned him with the first time he saw it. Never before he had ever seen anything that approached his graphic thought. He felt that Blake must have peeked in his ear and seen the red dragon. For weeks, Dollarhide had something that his thoughts might glow out of his ears, might be visible in the dark room, might fog the film. He put cotton balls in his ears. Then, fearing that cotton was too flammable, he tried steel wool. That made his ear bleed. Finally cut the small pieces of the asbestos cloth from the ironing board covered and rolled them into little pills that would fit his ears. He made ears bleed. Finally, he cut small pieces of asbestos cloth from an ironing board cover and rolled them into little pills. Okay. The red dragon was all he had for a long time. It was not all he had now. He felt the beginnings of an erection. He had wanted to go through this slowly, but now he could not wait. Dollarhide closed the heavy draperies over the windows in his downstairs parlor. He set up his screen and projector. His grandfather had put a lazy boy recliner in the parlor over his grandmother's objections. She had put a doily on the headrest. Now Dollarhide was glad. It was very comfortable. He draped the towel with the arm of the chair. He turned out the lamps, lying back into the dark room. He might have been anywhere. Over the ceiling fixture, he had a good light machine, which rotated, making very colored dots in the light crawl over the walls. The floor, his skin, he might have been reclining on the acceleration couch of a space vehicle in a glass bubble, out amongst the stars. When he closed his eyes, he thought he could feel the points of light move over him. And when he opened them, those might be the lights of the cities above or beneath him. There were no more down or up. The light machine turned faster as it got warm, and the door and the dots warmed over him, flowed over furniture in angular streams, fell in meteor showers from down the walls. He might have seen them something plugging through the Crab Nebula. There was one place shielded from light. He had placed a piece of cardboard near the machine, as it cast a shadow over the movie screen. Sometimes in the future, he would smoke first to heighten the effect, but he did not need it now. This time, he humbled the drop switch at his side to start the projector. A white rectangle sprang onto the screen, grayed and streaked as the leader moved past the lens, and then gray. Scotty perked up his ears and ran through the kitchen's float door, shivering and wagging his stumps of a tail. A cut of Scotty running beside a curve, turning to snap out his side as he ran. What the heck? Turning to snap at his side as he ran. Now Mr. Leeds came into the kitchen carrying groceries. She laughed and touched her hair. The children came behind her. A cut to a badly lit shot of Dollarhide's own bedroom upstairs. He is standing nude before the print of the great red dragon and the woman clothed in the sun. He is wearing combat glasses. His close-fitting wraparound plastic glasses favored by hockey players. He has an okay, which he improves with his hand. The focus blurs as he approaches the camera with stylized movements, hand reaching to change the focus of his face fills from the frame. The picture quivers and sharpens suddenly to a close-up of his mouth, his disfigured upper lip rolled back. Tongue out through the teeth, one rolling eye still the frame, the mouth fills the screen. Writhing lips pulled back from jagged teeth, and darkness of his mouth engulfs the lens. The difficulty of the next part was evident. The bounding blur of the harsh movie light became a hotel and Charles Leeds thrashing. Mr. Leeds sitting and shielding her eyes, turning to Leeds and putting her hands on him. Rolling towards the edge of the bed, legs tangled in the covers, trying to rise. The camera jerked towards the ceiling, molding, whipping across the screen like a stave, and then the picture steadied. Mr. Leeds backed down into the mattress, a dark spot on her nightdress spreading, and Leeds, hands on his neck, an eye wild rising. The screen went black for 5 beats. Then the tick of a splice. The camera was steady now. On a tripod, they were all dead now, arranged. 2 children sitting against the wall facing the bed, one seated across the corner from them facing the camera. Mr. and Mrs. Leeds in the bed with the covers over them. Mr. Leeds popped up against the headboard, the sheets covering the rope around his chest, and his head lolled to the side. Dollaride came into the picture from the left with stylized movements of a Balinese dancer, blood smeared and naked exceptions for his glasses and gloves. He smugged and capeered amongst the dead. He approached the far side of the bed. Mrs. Leeds sighed, took the corner of the covers, whipped them off the bed, and held a pose as though he had executed a Veronica. Now waiting in the parlor of his grandparents' house, Dollaride was covered with a sheen of sweat. His thick thumb ran out constantly, the scar of his upper lip wet and shiny. He moaned as he stimulated himself. Even at the height of his pleasure, he was sorry to see that in the film, and soon scene he lost all his grace and elegance of emotion, rooting pig-like with his bottom. Turned carelessly to the camera. Okay, buddy, this was not in the Hannibal show. What the fuck? This was none of it. None of this weird stuff was in there. Alright. There was no dramatic pauses, no sense of a pace or climax, just brutish frenzy. It was a wonderful way. Watching the film was wonderful, but not as wonderful as the acts themselves. 2 major flaws Dollaride felt were that the film did not actually show the deaths at show the deaths of the Litzies, and his own performance was poor toward the end. He seemed to lose all his values. That was not how the Red Dragon would do it. Well, he had many films to make. With experience, he hoped that he could maintain some aesthetic distance, even in the most intimate moments. He must bear down. This was his life work, a magnificent thing that would live forever. He must press on soon. He must select his fellow performers. Already he had copied several films of 4th of July family outgoings. The end of summer always brought out a rush of business at the film processing plant as vacation movies came in. Thanksgiving would bring another rush. Families were mailing their applications to him every day. That's the end of chapter 9. Well, I guess we got a glimpse of the Red Dragon, but most of all these sexual things were not part of it, and a little bit of his backstory that he somehow has a fascination of the Red Dragon. Hold on, the art piece? Hold on. What is it really? Seeing the print of the Great Dragon and the woman clothed with the sun. Alright. Well, just chapter 10 gets me page to 106. I have to say, this book is a little bit difficult to read because, anyways, It's supposed to be difficult. It's, yeah, it's 53 chapters, alright. Let me just... Nobody's watching this, right? Nobody. Nobody's watching this. What a beauty. Isn't that nice? Right. The plane from Washington to Birmingham was half empty. Graham took a window seat with no one beside him. He declined a tired sandwich of the stewardess offered and put his Jacoby file on the tray table. At the front, he had listened to the similarities between the Jacobys and the Litzies. Both couples in their late 30s, both had children, 2 boys and a girl. Edward Jacoby had another son by a previous marriage, who was away at college then when the family was killed. Dang. Both parents, in each case, had college degrees, and both families lived in 2-story houses with the pleasant suburbs. Mr. Jacoby and Mrs. Leeds were attractive women. The families had some of the best credit cards, but some of the same credit cards, and they subscribed to some of the most popular magazines. There were similarities in it. Charles Leeds was a tax attorney, while Edward Jacoby was an engineer and metallurgist. The Atlanta family were Presbyterian. The Jacobys were Catholic. The Litzies were lifelong Atlanta residents, while the Jacobys had lived in the Birmingham only 3 months, transferred there from Detroit. The word random sounded in Graham's head like a dripping faucet. Random selection of victims, no apparent motive. Newspapers used those terms, and detectives spat them out in anger and frustration in homicide squad rooms. Random wasn't accurate. Though Wilm, he knew he is a mass murderer and serial murderers. Graham knew that mass murders and serial murderers do not select their victims at random. The man who killed the Jacobys and Litzies saw something in them that drew him and drove him to do it. He might have known them. Graham hoped so. Or he might not have known them at all. But Graham wasn't sure the killer saw them as something before he killed them. He chose them because something in them spoke to him. And the women were at the core of it. Was it? What was it? Hold on. There were some differences in the crimes. Edward Jacoby was shot as he came downstairs carrying a flashlight. Probably he was awakened by a noise. Mrs. Jacoby and her children were shot in the head, Mr. Leeds in the abdomen. The weapon was a 9mm and automatic an 9mm automatic pistol in all the shootings. Traces of steel wool came from the house weight silencer were found in all the wounds. The cartridge's case bore no fingerprints. The knife had been used only in the charged leads. Dr. Princey believed it was a thin blade, very keen, possibly a filleting knife. The methods of entry were different too. A patio door pried open at the Jacobys, the glass cutter at the Ledseys. Photographs of the crime in Birmingham did not show the quantity of blood found in the Ledseys, but there were stains in the bathroom walls, about 2 1/2 feet above the floor, so the killer had an audience in Birmingham too. The Birmingham police checked the bodies for fingerprints, including the fingernails, and found nothing. Bureau for summer month in Birmingham would destroy any fingerprints like the one on the Leeds child. And both places were on the same blonde hairs, same spit, same semen. Graham propped photographs of the two smiling families against the seat in front of him and stared at them for a long time in the hanging quiet of the airplane. What could have attracted the murder, especially to them? Graham wanted very much to believe there is common factors that he would find it soon. Otherwise, he would have to enter more houses and see what the tooth fairy had left behind for him. Graham got directions from the Birmingham field office and checked in by the police by telephone from the airports. The compact car he rented spit water from the air conditioner vents into his hands and arms. He did stop at the Greehan Realty office on the Denison Avenue. Greehan, tall and bald, made haste across the turquoise shag to green. Graham. His smile faded. When Graham showed his identification and asked for the key to the Jacoby house. Will there be some cops in uniforms out there today? He asked, his hands on the top of his head. I don't know. I hope to God not. I've got a chance to show it twice this afternoon. It's a nice house. People see it and they forget this other. Last Thursday, I had a couple of the Duluth substantial retired people hot on the Sunbelt. I had them down to the short rows, talking mortgages. I mean, that man could have fronted a third. When the squad car rode up and they came, a couple asked them questions, and boy, did they get some answers. The good officers gave them the whole tour. Who was laying there. It was a goodbye. Greehan, much obliged for your trouble. I tried to show them how safe we fixed this, but they don't listen. There they go, jagged-legged through the gravel, climbing back into the sedan de Vega. Have any single man asked to look at it? They haven't asked me. It's multiple listing, and I don't think so. Though, police would have let us start painting until, I don't know, we were just got finished inside the last Tuesday. 2 coats of interior latex, 3 in places. We're still working outside. It'll be genuine chill place. I'm so tired. How can you sell it before the estate probated it? I can't close until probated, but that doesn't mean I can't be ready. People could move in the memorandum of understanding. I need to do something. A business associate of mine is holding the paper. That interest has worked all day and all night while you were asleep. Who is Mr. Jacoby? Executor. Byron Metcalf. Firm of Metcalf and Barnes. How long you figured on being out there? I don't know. Until I finished. You can drop that key in the mail. You don't have to come back by. Graham had a flat fleeing in the cold trail as he drove out to the Jacoby house. He was barely within the city limits of an area newly annexed. He stopped beside the highway once to check his map before he found to turn off onto asphalt secondary road. More than a month has passed since they were killed. What have they been doing then? Putting a pair of diesel in a 65-foot Marble Beach hole, signaling to Arriaga to the crane to calm down another half-inch. Molly came over into the late afternoon, and he and Molly and Arriaga sat under the ad-wing on the cockpit of the half-finished boat, and he ate the big prawns Molly brought and drank old Dos Equis beer. Arriaga explained the best way to clean crayfish, drawing the tail fan, the dust and sand dust on the deck, and the sunlight broken on the water played on the undersides of the wheeling gulls. Water from the air conditioner squirted out in the front of the Graham shirts. And he was in Birmingham now. There were no prawns or gulls. He was driving, and pastures and wooded lots were on his right with goats and horses in them, and on his left was Stonebridge, a long-established residential area with a few elegant homes and a number of rich people houses. He saw the realtor's sign 100 yards before he reached it. The Jacoby house was the only one on the right side of the road. The sap of the pecan trees beside the drive had made the gravel sticky and rattle inside the fenders of the car. A carpenter on the ladder was installing window guards. The workman raised a hand to Graham as he walked around the house. A flagged patio on the side was shaded with a large oak green. At night, the shade would block out the floodlight of the side yards as, well, this was where the Tooth Fairy had entered, through the sliding glass doors. The doors have been replaced with new ones, the aluminium frames that still bright and bearing the manufactured sticker, carrying the sliding doors with a new wrought iron security gate. The basement door was new too, flush steel and secured by deadbolts. The components had a hot tub stood in the crates of the flagstone. Graham went inside. Bare floors and dead airs. His step echoed in the empty house. The new mirrors in the bathroom had never reflected the Jacoby's faces or the killer's. On each was a fuzzy white spot where the price had been thrown off. The folded drop cloth lay in the corner of the master bedroom. Graham sat on it long enough for the sunlight through the bare windows to move one board width across the floor. There was nothing here. Nothing anymore. If he had come here immediately after the Jacobys were killed, would the Ledzi still be alive? Graham wondered if he tested the weight of that burden. It did not lift when he was out of the house and under the sky again. Graham stood on the table, shade of the pecan tree. Shoulders hunched, hands in his pocket, looked down on the lawn. Oh my days, man. Graham stood in the shade of the pecan tree, shoulders hunched, hands in his pocket, and looked down the long drive of the road past in front of the Jacoby house. How had the Tooth Fairy come to the Jacoby house? He had to drive. Where did he park? The gravel driveway was too noisy for a midnight visit. Graham thought. The Birmingham police did not agree. He walked down the drive to the roadside. The asphalt road was bordered with ditches as far as he could see. It might be possible to pull across the ditch and hide a vehicle in the brush on the Jacoby side of the road if the ground were hard and dry. Facing the Jacoby house across the road was a single entrance to Stonebridge. The sign that the Stonebridge had a private patrol service a trained vehicle that would be noticed there. So a man working late at night, scratch parking at Stonebridge. Graham went back into the house. He was surprised to find the telephone working. He called the weather bureau and learned that 3 inches of rain fell on the day before the Jacobys were killed. The ditches were full then. The Tooth Fairy did not hide his vehicle beside the asphalt road. A horse in the pasture beside the yard kept pace with Graham as he walked along the whitewashed fence towards the rear of the property. He gave a horse a lifesaver and left him at the corner, and turned into the long back fence behind the outbuildings. He stopped when he saw the depression in the ground where Jacoby's children had buried the cat. Thinking about the Atlanta police station with Springfield, he had pictured out the outbuildings as white. Actually, they were dark green. The children had wrapped the cat in a dish towel and then burned and buried it with a shoebox with flowers between its paws. Graham rested his forearm on the top of the fence and laid his forehead against it. A pet funeral. Solemn rites of childhood. Parents holding going back into their house, ashamed as prey. The children looking at another, discovering the new nerves that the place lost piercings. One bows their head then they all do. The shovel taller than any of. Then afterwards the discussion of whether or not the cat is still in heaven with God and Jesus. The children don't shout for a while. Certainly came to Graham as he stood sun hot on the back of his neck. Surely the Tooth Fairy killed the cat. He had watched the children bury it. He had to see it that he possibly could. How many pages, bro? Oh my god. Certainly came to Graham as he stood, sun hot on the back of his neck. Surely, as the Tooth Fairy killed the cat, he had watched the children bury it. He would had to see that possibly could. He did not make the 2 trips out here to kill one to kill the cat, and the second for the Jacobys. He came and killed the cat, and waited for the children to find it. There is no way to determine exactly where the children found the cat. The police had located the no one who spoke to the Jacobys afternoon, 10 hours or so before they died. How had the Jacobys' Tooth Fairy come? And where had he waited? Behind back fence, brush, and the cat. Oh my god. Running head high for 30 yards to the trees, Graham dug his wrinkled map out of his back pocket and spread it on the fence. It showed an unbroken strip of wood, quarter-mile deep, running across the back of the Jacobys' property, and continuing in both directions beyond the woods, bounding them at the south, was a section-line road parallel to the one of the front of the Jacobys' house. Graham drove to the house back to the highway, measuring the distance of his odometer. He went south on the highway, turned onto the section line of the road he had seen on the map. Measuring again, he drove slowly along it. The odometer, measuring it, showed him that he was behind the Jacoby house on the other side of the woods. Here, the pavement entered a low-income housing project. So new, it did not show up on his map. He pulled into the parking lot. Most of the cars were old, sagging on their springs. Two were up on blocks. Black children played basketball on the stair earth around a single nestless goal. Graham sat on his fender to watch the game for a moment. He wanted to take off his jacket, but he knew the .44 spectral and the flat camera on his belt would attract attention. He always felt curious and embarrassment when people looked at his pistol. There were 8 players on the team wearing shirts. The skin had 11, all playing at once, referring by an exclamation. A small skin shoved down the rebound and stalked home mad. He came back forfeited with a cookie and dived into the pack again. The yelling of the thump in the ball lifted Graham's spirits. 1 goal, 1 basketball. It struck him again how many things the Leeds had. The Jacobys too, according to the Birmingham police. When they ruled out a burglary, boats and sporting equipment, camping equipment, cameras and guns and rods, it was another thing the families had in common. With the thoughts of the Leeds and the Jacobys alive came through of how they were afterwards, and Graham couldn't watch basketball anymore. He took a deep breath and headed for the dark woods across the road. The underbrush, heavy at the edge of the pine woods, thinned when Graham reached the deep shade where he had easily go into the pine needles. The air was warm and still, blue jays in the trees. A head announces his coming. The ground slopped gently to a dry stream bed, where a few cypresses grew on the tracks of a raccoon. Raccoons and field mice were pressed into the red clay. A number of human footprints marked the stream bed, some of them left by children. All were carved and rounded, left several rains ago. Past the stream beds, the land rose again, changing to sandy loam that supported ferns beneath the pines. Graham worked his way uphill in the heat until he saw the light beneath the trees at the edge of the woods. Between the trunks, he could see the upper story of the Jacoby house, undergrowth again, hid high from the edge of the woods to the Jacoby's back fence. Graham worked his way through it and stood at the fence looking into the yard. The Tooth Fairy could have parked in the housing development and come through the house to the brush behind the house. He could have lured the cat into the brush and choked it, the body limped in one hand as he crawled into his knees and the other onto the fence. Graham could see the cat in the air, never twisting to land his feet, but hitting on his back, which thumped the yard. The Tooth Fairy did not. Did that daylight, the children would have not found or buried the cat at night, and he waited to see them find it. Did he wait for the rest of the day in the heat of the underbrush? The fence he would be visible through the rails. In order to see the yard from the farther back in the brush, he would have to stand face the windows of the house with the sun beaming on him. Clearly, he would go back to the trees. So did Graham. The Birmingham police were not stupid. He could see where he had pushed through the brush, searching an area as a matter of course. But that was before the cat was found. They were looking for clues, dropped tracks, not for a vantage point. He went a few yards into the forest behind the Jacoby house and worked back and forth in the dappled shade. First, he took the high ground to afford partial view of the yard, then worked his way down the tree line. He had searched far more than an hour when it winked of light. When the ground caught his eyes, he lost it, found it again. It was a ring-pulled tab of the soft drink. Can half-berries of the leaves beneath the elm tree, one of the few elms among the pines. He spotted it 8 feet away and went no closer for 5 minutes. While he scanned the ground across the tree around the trees, he squatted and brushed the leaves away ahead of him as he approached the tree. Duck walking in the path he made to avoid running any impressions. Working slowly, he cleared the leaves all around the trunk. No footprints had pressed through the mud of the last year's leaves. Near the aluminum tab he found a dried apple core eaten thin by ants. Birds had pecked out the seeds. He studied the ground for 10 more minutes. Finally, he sat on the ground, stretched out his aching legs. He leaned back against the tree. A cone of gnots swarmed the column of sunlight. A caterpillar rippled alongside the underside of a leaf. There was a wedge in the Red Creek mud of the instep of a boot on the limb above his head. Oh my days, man. Graham hung his coat on a branch and began to climb carefully on the opposite side of the tree, peering around the trunk at the limbs above that wedge of the mud. At 30 feet, he looked around the trunk, and there was Jacoby's house, 125 yards away. It looked different from the height, the roof color dominant. He could see the backyard and the ground behind the outbuildings very well. A decent pair of the field glasses would pick up an expression of the easily at the distance. Graham could hear the traffic in the distance and far away heard a beagle on the case. A cicada started in its numbing bandsaw buzz and drowned out other sounds. A thick limbs just about him joined the trunk in the right angle to the Jacoby house. He pulled himself up. He could see. Leaned around the trunk to look at it. Close by his cheeks, a soft drink can was wedged between the limbs of the truck. I love it, Graham whispered in the park. Oh, sweet Jesus, yes, come on. Can. Still, a child might have left it. He climbed higher on the side of the tree. Dicey worked on small branches and moved around until he looked down on the big limb. A patch of outer bark on the upper side of the limb was shaved away, leaving a field of green inner bark and the size of a playing card, centered of a green rectangle carved through the winter wood of the what the heck? The size of a playing card into the green rectangle carved through the white wood. Graham saw this. The size of a playing card centered the green rectangle carved through the wood. It was carefully done, and cleanly, and very sharp knife. It was not the work of a child. Graham photographed the mark carefully, picketing his exposures. The view of the big limb was good, and it had improved. The stub of a small branch stood down the limb above. It had been clipped off clearly to view. Fibers were compressed at the end of the slightly flattened in the cutting. Graham looked for the severed branch. If it had not been on the ground, he would have seen it, detangled in the limbs below, brown withered leaves amid the green foliage. The laboratory would need both sides of the cut in order to measure the pitch of the cutting edges, and been coming back here with a saw. He made several photographs of the stub. All the while he mumbled to himself, I think that after you killed the cat, threw it into the yard, my man, you climbed up here and waited. I think you watched the children and passed the time, witting and dreaming. When night came, you watched the shades go down. You saw the lights go out, one by one, and after a while you climbed down and went into the... Didn't you? It wouldn't be too hard to climb straight down from the big limb with a flashlight and the bright moon rising. It was hard enough to climb for Graham. He stuck the twig into an opening of the strong soft drink can, gently lifted it from the crouch of the tree, and descended, holding the twig in his teeth. When he had to use both hands, back at the housing project, Graham found that something had written, "Levon is a doo-doo head," in the dust of the side of his ear. Side of his car. The height of the writing indicated that even the youngest residents were well along in literacy. Back at the housing project, Graham found that someone had. Okay, I already read that part. He wondered if they had read it on the Tooth Fairy's car. Graham sat for a few minutes, looking up at the rows of the windows. They appeared to be about 100 units. It was possible that someone might remember a white stranger in the parking lot late at night. Even though a month had passed, it was worth trying to ask every resident to get it done quickly. He would need help from the Birmingham police. He fought the temptation and sent the drink can straight to Jimmy's Price in Washington. He had asked the Birmingham police for manpower. It would be better to give them what he had. Dustin. Dusting the can would be a straightforward job. Trying for fingerprints etched by acid sweat was another matter. Price could still do it after Birmingham dusted, as long as the can was handled with bare fingers. Better give it to the police. He knew the FBI document section would fall on the carving like a rabid mongoose. Pictures of that for everybody. Nothing lost there. He called Birmingham homicide from the Jacoby house. The detectives arrived just as the realtor, Greenhan, was ushering, and his prospective buyer was okay. What the fuck? He called Birmingham homicide from the Jacoby house. Detectives arrived just as the realtor, Greenhan, had ushering in his prospective buyers. Oh boy. Hold on, let me try to read this manpower skill then. Testing that straightforward job, trying for fingerprints etched by acid sweat was another matter. As long as the can was handled with bare fingers, better to give it to the police. You know that the FBI documented sections were carved like a. Well, that's the end of it. Now, chapter 11, and tomorrow I'm gonna read till like for an hour, probably, but I'm never gonna read out loud. I hate reading out loud. Like, reading out loud hurts my throat. It just does. And I don't know why, but it just does. Mental reading is more faster than just reading it out loud, because, like, though you are more open to, like, somewhat understand it, but it's more slower. But at the same time, if you read it with your mind, you tend to understand it unconsciously, even though you may not get the full picture, you still understand what's going on. Well, I mean, I really talk. I know talking out loud was a very good thing to do, but so what? So what? One hour 19. You know what?